Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and greetings from Michigan. Welcome to our Smart Solutions Learning Tech Bytes webinar. I'm Matt Kurtin, and I'm the Senior Director of Technology and Visual Design at Innovative Learning Group. And today we're going to be covering 4 10-minute topics. I'm delighted to be co-presenting today with Walter Schirmacher. Before we dive in, just a little bit about ILG. So we're a performance-first learning company. We've been in business for 17 years, as you can see, founded in 2004 by our owner and CEO, Lisa Tunegas. And we have more than 175 clients and 35 industries. So a lot of experience on learning technology. But as a performance-first learning company, we know that not all issues can be solved by technology or by training. What's really important is improving the performance of employees. And in many times, it's not a fancy e-learning or a VILT, but instead some well-designed performance support. So we're looking to use technology appropriately. Also of note, we're a certified women's business enterprise, a fact that's becoming more important to many of the organizations we work with as they look to increase diversity amongst their suppliers and vendors. And just a little background on us. Once again, I'm Matt Kurtin, ILG Senior Director of Technology and Visual Design. I lead our technology and our graphics team here, and I have 25 years of experience with e-learning development, ranging across e-learning authoring for web-based training to apps, learning management systems, and augmented and virtual reality. And presenting with me is Walter Schirmacher, who I've had the pleasure to work with together 10 years here. Welcome, Walter. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Matt. I'm a programmer and media developer at ILG, and I have more than 20 years experience in media development, education, and programming. I look forward to digging into our various topics today. So starting off, we're going to talk about chatbots. I like this quote: "Chatbots represent a new trend in how people access information, make decisions, and communicate." So to start off, what is a chatbot? A chatbot is a computer program that performs automated tasks and holds conversations with people. They're driven by, which is a fancy way of saying they have a lot of brains in the back end that power it and make it seem like a person talking to you rather than a machine. You can converse with them via text or voice and get a response back based on what you ask it. So how does a chatbot work? Well, they work by having a natural language question. So you ask it something in your normal voice or normal text. It gets processed and parsed so it can figure out what you're asking. The answer is looked up, the response is generated, and then it's turned back into a natural language response, which is text or voice.
So, Walter, when you talk about the natural language question, the computer is hearing what you're saying and converting that sound into text that it interprets, right? And then tries to make sense of that using artificial intelligence, come up with an answer, and then turn it back into a natural voice. So you talked about natural a couple of times here. And it seems to me like the natural part is really, the chatbot is trying to make it easier for us, that we don't have to do stuff so it can understand us. Instead, it understands us versus us doing stuff to make it understand us more easily.
Yep, that's right. Back when I started with computers, we had to be very regimented and specific, if I remember, with how you ask computers things. Otherwise, it didn't work and gave you an error.
Like if you were going to go into Google search, you'd put in a search term, and if you didn't put in the term carefully, it wouldn't understand, and the AI is making it better understand. The other thing that I think is interesting here is just in the quality of voice synthesis when it's talking back to you, that I've seen recently some things that are getting better and better, aside from like the Siri and Alexa that were always a higher quality. Now for us as developers, tools that can do better computer generated voices too.
So that's cool. Right. That's very cool. All right. So chatbots and learning. Chatbots can be used for training and performance support. They're great because they provide just-in-time information for learners. A good example would be to ask the chatbot for the latest processes and procedures, like how do I fill out my timesheet? Something we all do. Chatbots are available 24/7 and can provide words of encouragement. And they're great for introducing key learning tasks, micro-learning nuggets and such. They're more engaging than traditional tools like workbooks and emails, which you'll get like, email follow-up after your class. Hey, great job. They're a lot more engaging, and you can use the chatbot after training to improve retention and application of the subject and to really hone in those new skills. Chatbots are great because learners feel supported and they're not afraid to ask it any kind of question at all, because it's not like they're going up to an instructor and saying, hey, I know I didn't listen very well, but or I did listen well, but I didn't understand. Chatbots are never going to judge you. So they're not afraid to ask those dumb questions. They really do engage you. It feels like you're having a natural conversation. There's the word natural again, not like talking to a computer. And of course, they're mobile friendly. Organizations have benefits too. Chatbots often include real-time analytics and dashboards which track common questions. They track learner engagement, which is who's using it. You can view the off-hour interaction and evaluate skill development.
So on the dashboards, Walter, talk a little bit more about that, because in some of the chatbots that I developed using the AWS Lex, it has a chatbot functionality, but it doesn't have a report or a dashboard functionality. There's other Amazon tools that you could use to build it, but it's not provided by the chatbot.
Yep, that's right, Matt. There are some chatbots that have it built in. Like I've used a Microsoft toolkit that has a nice dashboard and everything analytics built right into it. And then other ones like BotKit and others don't have anything built in, and you have to actually build out all those dashboards and all that analytics and such yourself.
So either build it or find another, like a service that does the dashboards, and like pair the two together.
Yep, one or the other. So there's a really a good return on investment for the learner. You can really improve on what trainers and eLearning already does by supporting and streamlining training for a faster and better outcome. Like you could take an hour-long presentation and turn it into 10-minute micro-learning training sessions. And that, of course, helps reduce the trainer workload. Okay. Next, we're going to take a look at some examples of chatbots. Okay, so first off, we have a basic chatbot called BotKit. You can ask it simple queries like timesheet, and it'll provide, hey, here's where you can do your timesheet. You can ask it something else simple like, what's the phone number? Or ILG's phone number in this case, and it'll give us our phone number back. You can even ask it something it doesn't know, and if it hasn't been programmed for that, it'll give you back a response. Like, when's lunch? Sorry, I don't understand that yet. Next up, we're going to see a more advanced chatbot. And here I'm going to type in hello, and it's going to show how it's more interactive. So it comes back with, hi, I'm the ILG virtual agent. I can help you with account questions, training needs, onboarding questions, and more. If you'd like to speak to a human agent, let me know. So what can I help you with today? It's a lot more personal. So I can ask it something like, talk to a person, and it'll tell me how to connect with a person right now. As you can see on the left, there's a list of questions over there, and there's a whole variety of things you can ask it. And you really can customize these chatbots to really be what you need. Next up, we have an example of chatbot analytics. These were updated hourly, and it's updating right now. And this is going to show you the learner engagement rate, how many sessions you had, how long to get resolution, and very importantly, the abandonment rate, which is the last thing the user asks before leaving. Like it could be, how do I connect to guest Wi-Fi, or what's our internet address?
So cool, Walter. So I want to think about a couple of other things here. So in the beginning, you asked about how many people are using chatbots for learning, but another question we could have asked is just how many people are used to using chatbot through things like Siri and Alexa, because I guess we'd have got a lot more. And through that experience that people have, I think the thing that we want to think about as we move to using them for learning is, what is it that is similar to the way they're used on websites now for helping find information or helping order a product? What is similar in the training world that we might match it up to? So I think sometimes it would be training, but a lot of times it might be more for performance support. Yep. How do I figure out how to do something to go through that chatbot that way? Yep. So if there is one question for you here from Maureen. Thank you, Maureen. How do you develop a chatbot?
Well, actually, that's a good one, actually. So really what you got to do is there's actually a 4-step process for developing chatbots. You actually need to define your chatbot and figure out what it's going to do. And then you want to personalize it by giving it a name. You don't want to call it chatbot. You want to call it something personal. You want to build out your sequences, which is like a conversation flow between the learner and the chatbot.
kind of a tree, like if this happens, then ask about this. If this happens, then ask about this. And this is what I'm collecting.
Yep. So
right?
you really got to diagram those kind of things out. And then next you got to consider how else a learner could ask a question. So how else could, what are alternate ways? Like if somebody says timesheet, what else might they ask? How do I fill out a timesheet? They might come up with, how do I fill out my time reporting? So you need to come up with alternate words.
Yep.
And finally, you need to build out the chatbot scripts and define the learner questions and the answers. So you really need to write those all out. Then you actually get to the development part. Once you have all that written, and that's all that pre-development work is kind of like when you're developing a learning strategy, or like writing on an e-learning course. You're actually writing out everything ahead of time. Then you actually get to the back end where you actually build all the stuff out.
Okay, so there's a couple of questions I'll take together at the same time, and one is about cost to run them and specific software to use. So I'll take a first answer at this, Walter, and you can chime in. So certainly there's a huge variety of different tools that could be used to build chatbots, and a variety of different approaches. So if you're a programmer like Walter and I, you might get in behind the scenes and really write some code in JavaScript or C# or another language to make the chatbot work. But there are also services, just like you could sign up for a Zoom service or an email service, you could sign up for a chatbot service that really provides all of the programming already done. So you just need to make those programming flows. And as far as the cost to run, I know from developing them on Amazon Web Services that the cost to run a chatbot can be minuscule, like your cost and effort in order to develop it is going to be minuscule compared to the cost to run it. Of course, it's going to be a big difference if you're running it for 100 people or 100,000 people, but you could be talking about doing hundreds of thousands of processes of you submitting input and the chatbot responding before it gets expensive at all, with minimal cost to run. Let's see, another question, Walter, I'll put this one to you. What are your thoughts about using chatbots to help identify where more formal training may be needed? For example, if end users of process repeatedly ask the same question. So it sounds like the analytics kind of tie into that.
Yep. Yeah, that's actually where you look at the analytics and you look at what kind of questions are rising to the surface, like what are people repeatedly asking? And by analyzing those reports, you can figure out, okay, this is something people keep asking about, and we don't really, and then we look back at our responses and do we really have a good response for that? And if we don't, then maybe we want to add that to the chatbot, or you develop a course on that.
So there's a question about, is the chatbot built into the LMS or the content? And then a question about if chatbots run alongside the LMS, or how does it get integrated with the rest of the infrastructure, which I see those two questions as being related. So the first thing I will say is the LMS itself is not going to provide a general purpose chatbot that you could use for learning. You may find some learning management systems that has a chatbot that helps you find which learning to launch built into it, but you'll not likely find one that's available for your general purpose. With regard to integration to the rest of the infrastructure, you also probably are not going to find a built-in integration between the different chatbots that we mentioned, like AWS or Microsoft or others, that automatically integrates with learning management systems, because rarely would the goal of a chatbot be to achieve a particular score or to have a passing or failing grade by reaching the end of the chatbot. So you would have to do some thinking about how you connect it together. I would say that you could find a way that you went to the learning management system to find the starting spot to launch the chatbot, but more likely the rest of the integration besides starting it is probably going to be handled outside the normal LMS infrastructure, and you would have to find ways to integrate it. Our next topic is going to be quality assurance testing. And I want to start out just by saying that quality assurance testing is important, full stop. It is important. Really, after you've put in all the work on the design and the programming and the graphics and the audio and the editing for a course, the last thing that you want to do is to have the learners have a bad experience with it because you did everything right, but now you have functionality errors or poor performance. And I have found over years and years of doing quality assurance testing, it is difficult to catch everything. You're never going to catch everything, but you want to catch as much as you possibly can. And it is difficult to do so, and it is time consuming to do so. So in this section, what we're going to be talking about is what we can do to make QA testing easier for you as the QA testers, more robust. In other words, you're going to catch more things, and more reliable, that you're going to be sure you're going to catch those things. So I'm going to be going through this section in the form of 7 QA testing tips. So tip number 1 is to start with the end in mind. You can see I have the graphic of the strings connecting things together. We want to connect from where we are starting out with design of the project to how we're going to develop it to how we're going to test it. The goal is going to be to clarify the specifications before the design starts. And for example, what I mean there is we want to know before we start, what web browsers are we using? Are we using Chrome? Are we using Edge? Are we using Safari? What screen sizes? Is it any screen size? Is it 1024 by 768 or bigger? What connection speeds? Does it need a high bandwidth connection? Might people be going through a VPN that's effectively as slow as a dial-up modem? And if we set these things out at the beginning, this is how what we're going to support. Then we want to match that during development. And then we know when we go back to test, those are the things we need to test against. And so testing against those specifications at the end, if we set it out at the beginning with the end in mind, that's going to help us quite a bit. Now, this is a part of a page from what we call our e-learning infrastructure questionnaire, or our ELIC. And you can see here we're asking who's going to be taking the training, what kind of learning management, what learning system we're going to use to deliver, by a learning management system or by web server, or how. And documenting with these kind of specifications and design specifications or design standards about how we're going to design, this is going to help us really to have very clear and relevant guidelines to what the QA tester should be confirming. Tip number 2 for good QA testing. So obviously a checklist is going to help you do any task, but we're asking here specifically to maintain a master checklist or an exhaustive checklist of all the things that you might want to check, and maintain that over time. And then what we can do is when we go to a specific project or a specific client, we can pare down that checklist to just what's applicable then, but having the master checklist helps us keep from missing anything or not thinking of it when it's time to test. The checklist is going to help the QA tester for sure perform at a higher level, and it's going to help make sure that nothing slips through the cracks. And for good QA testing, what we want to try to do in as much as it's possible is to test everything that can be tested before we release that. And what I mean there is to avoid spot checking. So for instance, if on a knowledge check question, if once you've completed it and you leave and come back, you should not have to complete it again a second time. We don't want to check a few in the course and make sure, okay, that's good, a few worked, it's probably right. Instead, we want to check every single one.
You know, Matt, if you think about your prior tip on creating the checklist earlier in the process,
Yep.
You can use it so things are already more right earlier in the process as you go. We've all heard it's cheaper to do it earlier. So, it's cheaper. It costs less to fix things at design rather than development. So the less in the first draft, obviously, than the final draft. So the earlier you can catch it and fix it, then the better off you are.
Well, right, because if let's say that you don't find something until after you've done professional audio that the script was wrong, you're fixing not only the script, you're also going back to re-record the audio again. So for sure, the further you are along from design to development, the later you catch it, the more rework you have to do and the more it's going to cost to fix. Let's see, I want to make one more point here. So a good checklist is going to tell you not only what to check, but it's going to help the QA testers quite a bit if you also tell them why it's important, why are they doing that check, and also how to do the check. So here's an example of a QA testing checklist, which is specific to Storyline, and we have a similar one for Captivate and for Lectora, but there are a number of things in here that you would check that only apply to Storyline. So these are kind of pre-checks that we would do before getting into checking anything about the content. So one thing is to check that the required fonts are present. Here you can see we could mark yes, they are, or no, they're not, or not applicable, and a place to have a comment. But here's that why, how, right? So if the right fonts aren't there, when it's published, it's going to be replaced with other fonts. And this is going to change the look for the end learner. Not only will the font maybe look different, but if the font is sized differently, it might end up overlapping a graphic or something. So there's why to check and how to check. Open up Storyline 360, check for a notification if fonts are missing. So by opening up the source here and checking, you're going to get information about whether it's right, much easier than going through the whole course to make sure everything looks right. We'll see, I'll do one more example of that, checking for double spaces. Because oftentimes when people are typing on screen or in what's going to become the transcript in the notes view, they might put 2 spaces between sentences instead of 1 in cases. So why is pretty straightforward, but here's detailed steps about how to do that check in Storyline. So you get the idea here. We want to check everything and anything that we can check, and we want to be clear about why you're doing it and how you do it. Tip number 3, divide and conquer. And I love this graphic of all these people working on the roof. You can think of this as the old saying, many hands make light work. And here, I have another look kind of at the QA checklist, but what you'll notice is a column for a role, and I have abbreviations here, what's being tested by the QA tester, what's being tested by the programmer, what's being tested by the ID. But I want to go over here to show one in more detail. And I think one thing I will note here is when you're thinking about who's checking what, there isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer in every case, because checking whether there's double spaces could be checked by more than one person, it would be okay. But on the other hand, I would say some things really do lend themselves naturally to being checked by someone in particular. So for instance, if you're checking that the graphics are compressed well, not well enough, and you find that one needs to be compressed further, it might be nice if your graphic designer is checking that, because they can go in and compress and recheck if needed. Similarly, if you're checking that all the audio, the actual audio matches the audio transcript, it might make sense to have the instructional designer to do that, because you get the bonus that at the same time they could be checking that all of the content that they captured from the subject matter expert really sounds right at the same time. But at any rate, the most important thing out of this is to make sure that it's clear who's checking what, to make sure nothing gets missed, and to do the best you can to assign the right person to the role based on their expertise. Okay, tip number 4, use the source. So testing without looking at the source code results in a lot of trial and error clicking to try to find what the error is going to be. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack to find something that might be much easier to find. And we talked about this already with the fonts, that it's easier to check and get a report that fonts are missing than to go looking everywhere to see if something looks at like the wrong font. Here's another example, and this is from Storyline, the triggers, which is part of the coding in Storyline. You can see it says in bright pink and red there, set unassigned to unassigned. So if you were looking at the course, you would see nothing was wrong. But if you're looking at the source file instead of the published course, you're going to be immediately aware that something is wrong, although it might not be clear what. So it's possible that there was a variable that was supposed to be set to a value and it never got set. It's also possible that it was set up properly and then somebody deleted the variable, causing this to be broken. But the main point here is that if you're going through the pages of the course and you're going through the source code together with it, when you see this, it would say, I better check carefully to see if the course is working properly, because this is odd, because I see this problem in the source code at this point in the published course. Also, aside from just looking at the published course, you can also use the published course files if you understand them. So here I'm looking at 2 folders that result from publishing a Storyline course. The top one is showing the images that were published. And what I would be looking at for here, I have them sorted from largest to smallest. And typically I would be looking to see if any images are greater than 600 kilobytes. I want to go back and see if I can make them smaller. And sometimes what I see is I see 10,000 kilobytes here, and I go back and take it into Photoshop and compress it and get it down to 600 kilobytes. And to the visible eye, when you look at it, you can tell no difference, but it's going to load in a fraction of a second instead of minutes, right? So looking at that can help. In the lower image, it's similar, except for instead of looking for graphics, I'm looking at the sizes of audio and video to make sure, and more precisely, I'm not looking at the overall size like I was for a graphic. It's how big is the file. I'm really looking at the bit rate, which is how much of that audio or video is going to load per second. So for video, I'd be looking to make sure that it's somewhere around 800 or 900 kilobits per second or smaller. And for audio, maybe 64 kilobits per second or smaller, or 56 kilobits per second. Really, those standards of like the 600, the 800, the 64, they're specific to what the infrastructure is that you're running it on, what's going to be the minimum connection speed. But if you had no guideline established, the 800, 64, and 600 are pretty good standards to use as a general rule of thumb. And it's going to be essential to check these type of things, because it's going to make the difference from releasing a course that works flawlessly versus releasing a course and then having learners contact the help desk and say, I reached page 37 of the course, and when I try to go forward, I waited 5 minutes and nothing ever loaded because somebody didn't check properly that it works really across an internet connection instead of just on a fast local network. Okay, tip number 5, fix what you find. And this is just about efficiency. If the tester can also fix the issues when they find them, it's going to increase the efficiency and reduce miscommunication that could lead to errors slipping through the cracks. And it's really about how long does it take to document and clearly communicate. If you find a problem and it occurs a few different times, like I found that the audio transcript is not formatted properly on page 1 and on page 2 and on page 3, you'd be tempted to say, the audio transcript is not formatted properly. Programmer, please go back and fix it everywhere. But if you do that, then you didn't tell them each one specifically to fix it on. You said go fix it everywhere. Then the QA tester is going to need to come back and check it again. So neither one of those are good options. Document lots and lots of times that it needs to be fixed, or have it go off and be repaired and then check everything all again. Better if the same person who's doing the checking also has the skill to fix what they find. And this is going to help stick to one of the principles already mentioned before of avoiding the spot checking and making sure that you're really testing everything. Okay, let's see. Tip number 6, be every learner. So remember that no two learners are the same. Some are going to go fast, some are going to go slow, some are going to obediently click pop-ups from left to right in reading order, one after the other. Some maybe not so much. They might go randomly around in the pop-ups. The key is that we want to have the learning work in all cases, and we want to pay particular attention to make sure that instructions are clear. Sometimes as a QA tester, I'll find, well, they said the instructions in audio, but then more stuff happened and it ended up on a screen and there's no instructions on the screen. And if you missed that, don't remember that from the audio before, it's hard to figure out what to do. You would want to think, okay, technically there's not necessarily an error, but design-wise, it's not good if I, as a QA tester, I'm not sure what I should do next. It's really late in the game at QA testing to find problems with the design, but if you're the last pair of eyes on it and you're checking, it's incumbent upon you to report and fix that type of problem as well. And I can also think of cases where an error came back and somebody got stuck, and then we investigated further, and then the programmer said, well, they went really quick, or they went in reverse order. Well, as a QA tester, that's not an acceptable excuse to me. We want it to work in every case. We don't want a learner to get hung up. So be every learner. And then tip number 7, stock up on testing tools. So these are tools that are going to help you test more effectively. One is Browser Stack, that's going to let you test more devices than otherwise possible. Another is Chrome Dev Tools. It's going to help you be able to do stuff like test connection speed. And then Swarm Cloud, which is going to help you test how things are going to work in a learning management system before you get to the end learning management system. So this is the tool that we use, Browser Stack, and you can see across all these different browsers, all these different versions we could test. Right now I'm on Windows. I could also switch and test over on an iPad or an iPhone or an Android device. This is great for being able to really test how it's going to work on all these different devices without having to own the devices or configure the browsers. The one drawback that I will mention is that you can test everything on Windows and on some other platforms, but for instance, on some platforms, you can test everything except for it. You won't be able to tell if audio is playing when you test them that way, because it is not a simulator, it's a real virtual device, and some devices don't allow it to play back audio. The second tool I mentioned was the development tools, the Chrome dev tools. There are similar tools in other browsers as well. So you can see if I come here to more tools and developer tools, I can do things like change. And if I change here to an iPad, for instance, it does not actually act as an iPad would, like Browser Stack, but it at least will let you to see what the space would be like if you viewed it on that different device, which is important because we do produce training that runs on phones and tablets and so on. And you can see here throttling. So this is where I could say, even though I'm on a high-speed connection, let's see how it runs on a mid-tier mobile connection instead. And you can even set your own data rates. And then lastly of those tools, Storm Cloud will allow you to test the bookmarking and completion tracking to whether the course is properly sending that information and being received in the LMS without having the real LMS to do it.
So Matt, since Chrome lets you simulate being able to change sizes and stuff, why would I want to use something like Browser Stack?
Browser Stack is going to be the real device, whether, for instance, JavaScript on that device would work properly. With Chrome, when you switch over to that, it's just going to do the size or the bandwidth, but it isn't going to have the same JavaScript processor that you would have on those other real devices. So it is a good distinction that you're making, is you need those two for different purposes. One, to test if it really would work on that device, and the other to test things that are different about the speed or the size that might not be on any device, but you want to test the range.
You can find things like work perfectly and then put it on an actual device and then something doesn't show up. So next we're going to talk about creating videos for learning. And I like this quote from Orson Welles: create your own visual style, let it be unique for yourself and yet identifiable for others. Today we're going to talk about 3 visual tools. There are many programs you can use today to help you create videos for learning, but we're going to focus on 3 of them, which are VideoScribe, Beyond, and my favorite, After Effects. It's really important when you're choosing a tool to choose one that helps output videos that align with your learning and performance needs, as well as, of course, your corporate branding. As you will see, each has its strengths in specific areas where it excels at. So let's dive in. Starting with VideoScribe. VideoScribe is a tool that creates whiteboards only. It does drawn images using a hand-drawn effect. It's not character-based, but you can include movement and transitions, but not animations. It's not generic, though there are some templates available, but they're very limited. There's no lip syncing, so if you do have characters in VideoScribe, you can't sync the lips with the talking, so it doesn't look like they're really talking. And it's nice though, because it's quick to create, which is really budget friendly.
So when whiteboard only, some people will recognize that as being the explainer video where it draws things out.
Yep, that's right. And we'll look at some examples of these in a minute. Okay. Next is Beyond. Beyond is a cartoon animator that has an animated look and feel like a 2D cartoon in most cases. It includes characters which can be lip synced to audio, which is really cool. It's based on templates, which makes it fast and easy to create a project, and it's a great tool for beginners. It's designed for novice users with little to no experience, and it's easy to create great looking videos. But if you're an experienced video creator, you can create great results as well. Remember, you want to find and use the tool that fits your needs and branding.
So Walter, here you say cartoon animator, but this Beyond can also be used for the whiteboard like VideoScribe too.
Yep, that's right.
Yep.
Okay, and our third tool we're talking about is After Effects. After Effects is the king of animation tools, and it's a really high-end tool. It can be used to create about any type of animation, but it has a significant learning curve. This is a professional tool used by animators for TV, movies, and online video. There's no templates included, but there's many available for purchase online, so you can really, leverage things to help get you started. Once you get past the learning curve, it's a great tool that can use to create any kind of video. And you're not limited to a whiteboard like VideoScribe or character-based animation or other kinds like Beyond. It has endless possibilities. So that's an overview of the 3 tools, but the best way to see how they compare is to take a look. So we're going to look at some examples next of VideoScribe, Beyond, and After Effects.
So let's look at a best-in-class finance process at a Mercedes-Benz dealership. Meet Kelly. She's done her homework and believes a Mercedes-Benz is the car for her.
So as you can see, VideoScribe's whiteboard based, and here's another example of a hand-drawn image. There's no lip syncing, but it does produce a really nice looking video. So VideoScribe can be used for some really nice things. Next up, we have Beyond.
The IT department has an IT strategy. The marketing department has a marketing strategy. Why wouldn't the learning department have a learning strategy? Innovative Learning Group can help you create a learning strategy that aligns employee learning and performance needs with the company's long-term business goals.
Okay, so you can see Beyond has that animated look and feel, the 2D animations, and it's template based and easy to create great looking graphics. And coming up is my favorite part. You can include characters with lip syncing to audio, which are really cool. Okay, finally, we have After Effects. Very appropriate. As you can see, you can create really complicated effects like snowflakes falling, makes it all cool now. You're not limited by a template or anything, just the steeper learning curve. And once you master it, you can really create anything, and the sky's the limit with After Effects.
There is a question here about hand-drawn, how is the hand drawing done with VideoScribe? So I can speak to that a little bit. So you can use Adobe Illustrator to create each little bit of that drawing, the various lines that make it up, and then separate them out into different layers. And VideoScribe will then draw them. You don't have to do the animation in Illustrator. You just have that line drawn or that set of lines drawn. And then VideoScribe will do the drawing of it from beginning to end and make them come in one after another to do that drawing. So essentially you make the graphic in Illustrator and then VideoScribe turns it into an animation. Okay.
See, we have another question. How long does it take to really master After Effects? Well, it kind of varies by your past experience, but an average about 8 weeks of dedication is pretty much on par.
Next, we're talking about learning systems, platforms and portals, which is going to include learning management systems, learning experience platforms, learning record score and SCORM and XAPI and CMI5, and the list goes on and on. For the big systems, the first one we're going to talk about is the learning management system. And it has been around for much longer than learning experience platforms and learning record stores. Most important features of a learning management system historically have been focused on providing access to required learning that employees have to take. This could come in the form of a centralized course catalog, or often it becomes like your action plan or your learning plan of what you're required to take next. The LMS is focused in on the progress that's stored in bookmarks and on records and reports on the required learning. Now, employees could also go into the catalog to search for elective learning. If, for instance, they want to advance in their career, they want to learn something new so that they're ready to go to the next role. But I would be able to say fairly, without being concerned about being wrong, that the user interface for finding this elective learning in a learning management system is less than elegant as compared to a learning experience platform, right? Like if you think that a nice, elegant solution for finding what training to take next was like going to the library and looking for the card catalog to try to find a book, then the learning management system catalog is good at it. But if you're more used to the watch the video in YouTube and it recommends what I should take next, watch next, a learning experience platform is more like that.
Hey, Matt, you mentioned reports. Can you talk about what type of report tools typically come with an LMS, learning management system?
So the reporting tools that come with learning management system could vary quite a bit depending on the system. Some of the higher end systems have all kinds of dashboards and reports. And then the main thing you're looking for there is not only what reports does it have, but the tools to custom build your own reports in an easy fashion. Some are more sophisticated than others, but in a high-end learning management system, you can get quite a lot of reports. The learning management systems also tend to be linked to a larger suite of tools, which might have recruiting and performance management, talent management, and other things. So you could imagine in a learning management system, if it's connected to the performance management system, you could work with your manager to figure out, okay, I want to advance to another role. Here's the things that you might want to do in order to help develop. Some of those things might be job shadowing. Some of them might be courses that happen to be in the learning management system, and you can actually attach to your performance plan. Here's the courses I'm going to go take. So that type of integration is nice. But what if you did want to make it easier to find relevant training for your current role or the role that you aspire to have? This is going to lead to these systems that can complement the LMS. And I'm going to say complement the LMS because although there is an overlap between what's in a learning management system and some of these other systems, really there are a lot of features that are only in one or the other. Particularly, there are lots and lots and lots of functions in the big learning management systems that the learning experience platforms and some of the other systems don't have a need for, so they haven't duplicated it. But while the learning management system has some features for elective, it's more historically focused on what's required to get done for compliance, right? The learning experience platform is focused on making the elective content easy. Super user-friendly, super easy to browse, going to make recommendations for you based on what you've taken before, based on your job role or your responsibilities, and based on the ratings of other employees similar to you to help you know what you should take next. So I mentioned that YouTube, right? In YouTube, you finish the video, it tells you what to take next. You could think of the same thing here. I would say I took a course on basic negotiating skills. Imagine I finished that and it pops up at the end and said, hey, we recommend that you might want to take more advanced concepts on negotiating skills because you took this and this one is highly rated. And if you think about it, why wasn't this a functionality that's in the learning experience platform? Why wasn't it built into the learning management systems to begin with? Well, part of the reason is that not that much reason for it if basically you're going to take the things in your learning plan, and basically if you search for other things like negotiating skills, if it didn't turn up anything, it would be no good to you, which sort of comes around to the reason of why the learning experience platforms got developed in the first place, is that most often the provider of these learning experience platforms is also the provider of libraries of off-the-shelf training. And they're trying to find easy ways for you to find the off-the-shelf training that they want you to take so they can sell licenses for that. Which what means you need to think about when you're selecting a learning experience platform is if your goal is to make it easy for employees to find a whole bunch of stuff that might be in a Skillsoft or a LinkedIn Learning, the learning experience platform can make it easy for the employees to find that. But if your goal is to have a learning experience platform to make it easy to use experience for your own custom content, you're going to want to do due diligence to make sure that the learning experience platform really works well for custom content like it does for off-the-shelf content. I did also want to mention in learning experience platforms that learning experience platforms could have a social component where people can not only rate courses, but put questions and answers or comments. And primary driver of the social aspect of the learning experience platform is also going to be to drive more people to take things when they see others are interacting with it. But again, in general, the feature set of an LXP is a lot about how to find content very easily and connecting it to that existing content. And otherwise, it does not overlap a whole lot with all the other bevy of features that are in a learning management system. Next, XAPI Learning Record Store. So we talked about the learning management system focused on formal training, learning experience platform more focused on elective training. So the Learning Record Store is quite different. It really provides the underlying infrastructure for tracking learning experiences, which start from anywhere with that XAPI or CMI5 standard. But the Learning Record Store really doesn't have any interface in and of itself. It's the behind the scenes. It's the place to store the data, the standard way to store it, the communication protocol, and application programming interface or API functions that you can call to store data. So in and of itself, by definition, a learning record store a user wouldn't see. It doesn't have reports, it doesn't have dashboards. It really just is a way and a place to store the data that happens during learning. And you would need to get separate tools for reporting and data visualization. But I will caveat that by saying that you can find providers that bundle the dashboards and reporting together with the underlying learning record store, so you don't have to get them separately. But if you just got a learning record store, you would get nothing but the place to store stuff. All right, next, learning portals. And these differ from any of the three that we've talked about so far. They do share some in common with learning experience platforms of a goal of providing a user-friendly interface to help learners find content. But really the purpose is quite different. Instead of only being about those recommendations, it's more about organizing content than recommending, which is the big feature of the learning experience platform, right? So portals are meant to be the one place to start on your journey when you're finding content that you want to take, so that you don't have to start from 50 different places. And there really are lots of different ways or scopes, I would call it, for a learning portal of what they're trying to organize. So it could be to organize all content within your organization. And if, like many, you work in an organization that has multiple learning management systems, I've sometimes seen companies that have as many as 9 or 10 different learning management systems, quite a hassle to go in one and see if the course you're supposed to take is there, and go in another and look at your learning plan there, right? So the learning portal might be one place that you could start with a central catalog so that you could find the stuff regardless of what learning management system it was in. And it would either let you launch it from that one learning management system through a deep link or route you to the right place. So at least you're starting one place, even if you're ending up at others. In other cases, instead of being like organizing everything, the portal might be specific to a topic. Like maybe it's a portal to make it easy for sales reps to find sales training, or a portal to make it easy to find leadership training. So maybe the leadership training is still all right in the LMS where it was, but this portal is a nice, easy way to organize it. Could be in lists and menus. It could be in search functionality. It could be with icons, a nice graphical path to follow. The learning portal is just in front, making it easy to navigate. And then the last example here would be specific to the delivery method. And we've had clients that we helped because they have a learning management system that doesn't work great with mobile. And so what they wanted to do is put a portal in front of that is super easy to navigate on phones. It uses push notifications and traditional tiles and sliding to find the content on the phone and not have to go through the regular learning management system to find that content. And then I wanted to point out one thing about what's changing in technology with regard to learning portals, because it's fairly new. And that has to do with where learning experience platforms and portals are starting to overlap a little bit further. And that is, instead of thinking about a portal where you as a portal administrator have to build all those menus and all the functionality to link down to the content, you might do building a taxonomy out to a certain point, but then you rely on the AI to match it up after you get to that point. So maybe your portal gets down to the point of leadership training, but then things that are tagged with metadata or hashtags that indicate content is related to leadership training would automatically get populated into that part of the portal. Whenever new content is created, it automatically gets aggregated into that part of the portal instead of somebody having to administer it. So I think another cool use of AI, although maybe not a super fancy AI, helpful to have. So that's the end of that section. And I'll check to see if there's any questions on this section, or since we're at the end, if there's any question on any of the prior sections. One question here: if the learning record store is the underlying infrastructure, why do I need that? So the reality would be you might not need it, right? If you have a system that is doing the dashboards for you, and that system might itself be based on a learning record store, but maybe no reason for you to form a contract with the learning record store company if the learning management system or the portal that you are using as a service provides that, but perhaps it may be based on a learning record store underneath. Let's see. How do you pick which of these systems we need? So really, you have to start kind of like with design of a course, from the requirements of what it is you want to achieve, and start to go through a process to really define what it is you need and which system best fulfills those needs. And then once you pick, like, I want a learning management system or I want a learning experience platform, Then you refine further what are your requirements inside that to find the best match. But you have to remember, unless you're custom building from scratch, where you can build whatever you want, you're going to kind of look for the best match among what's available in the systems, which means you're probably not going to match everything. So you'll need to prioritize. And we do have kind of checklists across these different systems that say, here's all the features you might or might not have that could help you narrow down your choices. All right, I don't see any other questions. Walter, do you see any I missed?
Nope, I think you got them all.
All right, well, thank you, Walter, for presenting. I enjoyed co-presenting with you today. Thank you for your expertise on the topics you presented. I want to thank all of you who joined us today. Certainly to reach out to us if you have other questions, thoughts, or further comments. You see our contact info on the screen here. You can get in touch with Walter and I by email or Twitter. Also, Innovative Learning Group is on Twitter. We would encourage you to follow us. We also have a LinkedIn group, Friends of Innovative Learning Group, which we welcome you to join and post any discussion items or questions there. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you.